and welcome to the Hot Rod Pod, where it all began. We are back with more great stories, more great information, and more great storytelling. I am Brian Loans, lead broadcaster for the NHRA on Fox, a guy you might have seen hanging out with David Freiburger at events like Drag Week and other unfortunate times in my life, perhaps. And this guy, John McGann, the editor of Hot Rod Magazine. John, the subject of this particular show is Erica Enders.
I loved her story. She's got a stellar career. You
Yes.
can't deny that. But I like the story of how what I picked up on how driven she is, focused, aggressive,
Yes.
how methodical she is, race to race to race, track to track, year after year.
Yeah, year after year. She garnered her 6th NHRA championship during the end of this 2023 season, a year that started out with a really bad beginning. In fact, the worst beginning of her professional career. We go down some of those roads. We talked about kind of what motivated her and how they kind of dug themselves out of a trench.
And it was just impressive to see someone who's been so successful and then struggle so much, but then turn it around, and what she mentally went through to turn it around.
And
mentally, physically.
Yeah, mentally, physically. And she's had to fight the battles through her career that you would expect anybody would in her position. The first female to ever win a national event in Pro Stock, the first female to ever win a championship in Pro Stock, and now to keep piling them on top of these guys. It can be said that she is not the most loved person in the pits, and she knows that.
Probably not, and she said she doesn't need to be, and it's not, that's not what she's there for. She's there to win races and do right by her team.
And that is exactly what she has done. David Freiburger joined us for this episode that was recorded at the 2023 SEMA show. It's Erica Enders Uncorked.
And could her ring count as a guest also?
Her ring, yeah, actually her ring, as you'll notice, she has a ring, a championship ring on her finger that I believe she needs to check in at airport security when she goes anywhere. So enjoy this episode. Erica Enders, now a 6-time NHRA Pro Stock World Champion. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 2023 SEMA show. And more importantly, welcome to Hot Rod the Pod, where it all began, a brand new burgeoning Hot Rod series, or podcast series, I should say, from MotorTrend, built around Hot Rod Magazine, around the great stories of not only hot rodding, drag racing, the high-performance aftermarket, motorsports, and all. I am Brian Loans, the lead broadcaster for the NHRA, a total dork about cars, but not as big a dork as these two guys, David Freiburger and John McGann, the co-hosts on the show. Fellas, how are you?
Fantastic. I'm just getting used to my 34th SEMA show, I believe, and happy to be doing this brand new deal. How about you?
I'm excited. I can't wait. I've been wanting to do a podcast for a long time for Hot Rod, so this is a big step for us. I'm thrilled to be here.
So John McGann, the current editor-in-chief of Hot Rod Magazine, and myself having done it for, I think, a dozen years.
So we are rolling out the big guns this week in SEMA. We have the big guests. We're going full high performance, and we are leading off here with Miss Erica Enders, who is a 5-time and defending world champion at NHRA Pro Stock Eliminator. She has won now 48, right? This was 48
Correct,
this weekend.
yep.
48 national events. She won in Vegas for the 10th time, 11th if you count big money bracket racing, and she got to attend a wedding last night. So all is well. This is a full Vegas experience.
Total Vegas experience. One solid week here, which in dog years is like a whole year. So,
But let's also not overlook, 2 races back, the most winning woman in all of motorsports, period, right?
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that happened at Dallas.
It did.
Yeah.
We-
Is that something that you were really going for, or is it just a thing that happened?
Well, both, I guess, a little bit. But the way I tell the story, in 2015 when we won our first U.S. Nationals, we tied Shirley Muldowney with 18 victories.
Yeah.
Angel has been the leader of the pack for forever, and it just seemed like such a distant goal. And here we are, just a few years later, being able to accomplish it. So I never thought I would race long enough to pass her. And I said in my World Champ speech last year that, Greg Anderson, you're safe. I'm not racing that long, so who the hell knows what's going to happen.
Well, you've done it in a very compacted schedule, actually. It's just since you've been at Elite, you won 43.
Correct,
Is that
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I joined Elite at the end of 2013. 2014 was our first year together, and we ran a limited schedule and ended up winning the World Championship our first year together. Backed it up in 15 and have won 5 total in 10 years. So, and that's with the manufacturer debacle. So,
Yes, which we're going to touch on all that fun stuff as we go through this conversation. But, really we have to talk about Erica's background. We have to talk about what NHRA Pro Stock is. And for those of you that aren't super diehard drag racing fans, there are 4 professional categories in the NHRA. You have Pro Stock Motorcycle, Pro Stock Car, Nitro Funny Car, and Top Fuel. Erica races in Pro Stock. So this is a naturally aspirated engine, 500 cubic inches, backed by a 5-speed manual transmission. She has to leave off a clutch pedal, make the gear changes. And for both of you two guys, we're got all hardcore gearheads at this table. we talk about a 1,500 horsepower naturally aspirated engine, 3 horsepower per cubic inch. That's insane.
It is. It's incredible. And I love your in-car footage watching you shift and go through the gears. It's such an impressive spectacle to see that you don't get to see just watching the cars going down the track. I love the in-car stuff.
You know, I think there's a lot of the Hot Rod Magazine audience that is really old school who says, you know, oh, it's not what it was back in the heyday. 1970 is where it began at the NHRA Winter Nationals and everything. And the class has changed a number of times from when it was really an extension of super stock, and then it went into a weight per cubic inch deal, which is how Grumpy got away with the 331 cubic inch Vega and all that stuff. And when did it go to 500 cubic inches? 1982? Okay, I was about to say 84.
Yeah.
And that's what it's been ever since then. And I think that what people overlook is the competitiveness of it. The miraculousness of how the ladder could go down 8 or 16 spots within a couple hun.
Yes.
Is pretty incredible. And how you're able to do that and basically kill them all on the starting line and miraculously have usually the quickest car in the pack too, at least in the second half of this season.
Yeah, to me, it's super fun to drive. You talked about the in-car camera. A lot of the weight's on the driver's shoulders, having to leave with a clutch. It's a 5-speed Liberty, as Loans mentioned. With a 10,500 RPM rev limiter, it's really very, very, very important to hit your shift points, because if you're early, you got it. If you hit the chip, your G meter your face hits the steering wheel, and it's kind of over. But absolutely love Pro Stock. People always ask me, am I going to move up to Top Fuel or Funny Car, which sure, I'll drive anything, but I love just the challenge of Pro Stock.
Well, you've done Pro Mod. Now you've done Mountain Motor as well, haven't you? You're first woman to ever drive Mountain Motor, I think. But Pro Stock's where you live.
Yes, I love it. The Mountain Motor Pro Stock car is pretty fun to drive. It's 826 cubic inches. It's really throaty and a lot of torque, and you're in low gear like twice as long as you are in the 500-inch stuff. So the shifting pattern is completely off, and they're kind of just beasts, but not as impressive, in my opinion, as the 500-inch. I just love that screaming.
The 500-inch Pro Stock is like the violin. It's like perfectly tuned, and the 800-inch Pro Stock car is like Eddie Van Halen shredding on a guitar, right? It's like two totally different things. And so when we talk about a Mountain Motor Pro Stock car, back in the 80s, when NHRA went to this 500 cubic inch formula, the IHRA decided, screw it. Like, we'll just let you it's got to be naturally aspirated, but you can put as big a motor as you want in one of these cars. And so it started out as 555-inch or 600-inch engines, and then the bore spacing blocks came out with this wider bore spacing and deeper skirts. Like, these things now have, I think, about a 6-inch stroke. The crankshafts weigh about 100 pounds. And to your point, the torque they make is crazy.
It's insane. The valve covers are like this freaking big, too.
Gene Wilson is one of before the NHRA started having the Mountain Motor Pro Stock cars in as like a 6 or 8 race season, a guy named Gene Wilson years ago in the early 2000s, you might have known Gene.
I raced with him at Schumacher.
Okay, perfect. So Gene Wilson was like a rock star on the IHRA Mountain Motor side, and he made the switch over to the 500-inch cars. And I remember talking to him in the pits, and he said, the Mountain Motor car pulls to the finish line.
It does. When you put it in high gear, you can feel it.
It's still pulling. So it's kind of neat to be able to split your time in both.
I love it. And you mentioned Pro Mod also. I drove a twin turbo Pro Mod car, and they tried to kill me a couple times in that thing.
Saw that.
I love a door car. I love a short wheelbase suspended race car with little to no downforce. It's a lot of fun to drive.
So we've gone over sort of a quick history of Pro Stock and where that went. I think we need to touch on her history and how she got it. And there's 2 movies that you can watch, really. One's a Disney movie. One's more recent that you can see on Flow Racing.
Yes.
Can you I know you've done this a million times in your life. Can you give us the snapshot of sort of where you came from?
Sure. As kids, my sister and I grew up watching our dad race, not as a professional, just a hobby racer, NHRA drag racing, of course. And when I was 8 years old, I was flipping through the National Dragster in the garage while my dad was working on his car, and I saw this big article about they're going to introduce the Junior Drag Racing League, where kids from 8 to 17 at the time could race. It's since then been lowered to the age of 5, but I grabbed the magazine and the shop light and rolled under the car. I'm like, Dad, look, they're going to let kids drive. Like, do you think I could do it? And he said, you're a good kid. You make good grades. I don't see why not. And he had some pretty crazy rules for us. We had to be straight A students in order to race. But yeah, so I competed in junior drag racing for 9 years. Got my Super Comp license at Frank Hawley School when I turned 16. That was my birthday present. And kind of doubled back to juniors until my 17th birthday and raced Super Comp and Super Gas in the Lucas Oil Series for 5 years. And in 2004, got my Pro Stock license, and I've been racing Pro Stock for 19 years now. So drove a lot of other crap in between, but yeah. So that's kind of like the drink of water from a fire hose.
And what's the name of the Disney movie that's about you and your sister Courtney?
The Disney movie's called Right on Track. It's available on Disney Plus. And then the one you mentioned about Flow Racing, it's in front of the paywall, so you can go to Flow Racing or download their app for free, and you can watch Speed Queens, which is about a 45-minute documentary, just a one-show deal.
It's a little different in character than the Disney one.
It is definitely not okay to play on the Disney Channel. There are some curse words in there and some crazy stuff going on, but it's a behind-the-scenes look of what we have to go through in the Pro Stock deal and what it takes to make it happen. And that's what I was so proud to be able to show. Not super proud about the joking around about the cuss words and whatnot, but we're drag racers.
It's real life. It's real life.
It is real life. And it shows the behind the scenes of how much work it takes and how passionate we all are about it and just how much it means to us. So it's pretty cool.
And of course, your team is Elite Motorsports, which is, I think, the biggest team in Pro Stock. How could it not be?
I think it's the biggest team in drag racing, period, honestly.
Probably in drag racing
volume,
history.
sure.
It's bigger than DSR ever was at their highest point, isn't it?
In terms of raw number of cars, I believe you're right. I mean, at DSR's total peak, they had a Pro Stock car and a Pro Stock motorcycle, but they never had, I guess, 10
that
now,
many.
counting Jaggy.
10.
Is it 10?
10.
With
wow.
Jaggy.
Not to mention renting cars to renting engines to everybody else.
Yes.
Yeah.
John, you got some?
I was just wondering what the experience is like to, since you started driving in 2005, to how have the cars changed? Engines changed, drivetrains, is it kind of the same, but just more of, more power, more?
There's a lot that's changed, especially for me. When I had never raced a clutch car, I drove one on the street.
Yeah.
I got my license in alcohol funny car, so that was the first race car that I drove with a clutch in it. But it's evolved substantially. I first started in a Chevy Cavalier. That's how old I am.
Oh, wow.
We went from that to the Cobalt, and obviously now the Camaro.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm most excited about is the safety that has changed with it. When I first, I was a 19-year-old kid, right, and a girl at that, and probably weighed 120 pounds soaking wet, and there's it's just a carbon fiber bucket that you sat in.
Mm-hmm.
The window net was very narrow. Just no Hans device was required.
Yeah.
We wore neck collars, so everything that's come from the bad things that have happened makes me happy. We have the seats now, and I have a right side net, and my window net's big. We have tie behind the backs, in case something comes through. It's just I don't know. It's come a long way. And then what's so crazy also is I've driven for people like Victor Cagnazzi and Don Schumacher, Jim Cunningham, but Cagnazzi was very protective of all the things. They would put this wire through the bolt on the valve cover.
Safety wire, everything.
Yeah,
Wow.
Grumpy Jenkins. He's don't touch me.
Yeah.
So, but the way that's changed too, we used to have a key card to get in the engine shop at Cagnazzi's. Richard, Richard, he's just an open book. He invites Fox into our shop. You can see everything you want, except for the intake manifolds.
Yeah.
And that's still our proprietary deal, but it has come a long way. But the most important part of it has been the safety aspect.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things to me that gets lost in your career, because obviously we focus on the present, we look at what's happening now, we look at what you have achieved in the last couple of years, but what you just mentioned, you actually have an incredible bridge from this old world Pro Stock to new. And something that many people don't know about, it came up at a dinner conversation Dave and I were having last night, is talk about your relationship with Bob Glidden, because this is something, again, that kind of gets lost to your history, but you and Bob were thick as thieves.
We were. And growing up as a kid, being a fan of Pro Stock, before even wanting to drive one, Bob Glidden's the man, right?
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to work with him when I drove for Jim Cunningham in the Ford Mustang. And I was really nervous and apprehensive because Bob Glidden grew up in an era where it really, honestly, it wasn't okay for women to do the same thing that men did. And so I just was this guy's going to probably hate me. It was the exact opposite. He took me under his wings. He taught me things that only Bob Glidden could teach me. He always had my back, even after we, parted ways at Cunningham and he passed away. But driving for Elite, I went through this kind of slump in 2014. I had a great race car, and I had 4 races that I lost on hole shots. And he would call me every Monday morning, and he's like, "Gosh, damn it, Erica, what is going on?" And he would sit on the phone with me for hours, and then he'd call my crew chief, Rick Jones, and he just would try to help us get to the bottom of it. And if you're consistent here, we got to bring the car to her, and just always super hands-on and super supportive. And when I won my first race in 2012, I was in the press room, and my phone rang. he was the first person to call, and I picked up my phone. It said Bob Glidden. I'm like, I got to take this.
Y'all can wait a second.
Yeah, y'all just hold on. But, I was able to go see him right before he passed away. And fun fact, this weekend after we won on Sunday, Billy Glidden reached out, and he said, I don't ever reach out, but he said, I just want you to know how proud my dad would be of you.
Sweet.
So that meant a lot to me. And Bob was gruff and tough and whatever, but he had a big heart and just so knowledgeable.
And just, David, not to hold you up here, but what was it about you that he respected? Like, what was it about you that, because he didn't treat everybody that way, not that he was a mean guy, but he also, if he thought you were an idiot, you would know in the first 30 seconds.
100%, he would tell you.
So what was that thing that, and if you can't put your finger on it, that's fine, but what was that between the two of you?
He liked, like, when he would look at our graphs, we'd come back with the race pack data, and he just, like, I always shifted really well. And, I've obviously evolved as a racer. I sucked horribly when I first started. I can't imagine what these guys I was competing against thought. Jeez Louise, this is why they don't let women do this. But, it's a huge learning curve. It's a hard car to drive, and even now, 19 years later, I'm learning something every single pass. But he told me he loved that I was tenacious, that I didn't ever quit. And I just, no matter how many people were horrible to me and treated me like crap, that I put my head down and I just kept going after it. Obviously wasn't easy, but that's what he told me. He loved that I didn't ever give up.
So the thing about Glidden reminded me of this. Last year when you won your championship, I had made a post, and I had called you, ready for it, the greatest Pro Stock driver of all time.
Oh, and God, how many emails did you get?
People were dogpiling me. It's like, dude, WJ, Glidden, Grumpy, and all this stuff. And the point I made is they were really mechanics. They weren't pure drivers. I mean, Ronnie Sox, I guess, was a straight-up driver, hired gun.
Yeah.
But how do you feel that has really changed? I mean, this weekend you said you had the greatest motorsports team in the history of motorsports,
My
right?
opinion,
so
but I believe
that's got to include you, right?
I mean, I'm a part of the puzzle.
You're a huge
none
part
of
of it.
None of us got here alone, right? Like Richard was telling the story at dinner a couple nights ago to a couple of our partners. Like he said, I almost went broke trying to get people to run my stuff. He said, I saw an opportunity to hire Erica. She's a good driver, to showcase the horsepower that we have, because you put a marginal driver in good horsepower, you're still going to come out looking like a turd. So
we see it every week, actually.
Yeah.
It's still true.
It is still true. So he said, and I mentioned we ran a limited season our first year together, but he said I wouldn't have 10 cars right now had you not come to drive, and we wouldn't be here without Jake Hairston and Kyle Bates and Mark Ingersoll and Ricky Jones. Like, it's just like this huge group of people who have become family, but none of us got here alone. So.
But the pressure all comes down to you. All of their work falls apart with one red light.
It does. One red light, one late reaction time, one missed shift, one accidentally wheel whipping it. I mean, it doesn't matter. The human variable is the biggest one of all, and when they shut that door, it's all on me. So it wasn't something that I had naturally to love pressure, right? I had to learn how to love pressure. And you mentioned the people that the greatest Pro Stock driver. I don't think that we have a ton of really talented people. Jake Coughlin's somebody that I'm always thoroughly impressed with him. But he's been out of the seat for 3 years. He came back and tested on Monday. His first Q1 at Vegas. Yeah. Freaking like 00 on the tree. You could lay a level across his shift points. I'm like, this guy is unbelievable. He's a total wheel man. But I do work on my cars. I mean, like, I don't just come back and like go sit in the lounge and drink toddies. I mean, like, I work. I come back. I get the Pro Jacks under the car. We get it up. Richard Freeman and I do the firewall forward. So I run the valves, check spring pressure. If we got to swing engines, we got to swing engines. I go up with the crew chiefs and go over everything. I'm non-computer data, but sometimes drivers can tell you things that computers can't, and I'm responsible for all my clutch linkage, and that's my non-electronic delay box. So I'm really hands-on. I really am, and I love learning about it. I love working on it. I got broken fingernails, looking like a hobo over here, but like, I work on my stuff. I'm not just a driver, and that's what I wish people would understand. Like, when they spew that crap, like, no, I'm not Grumpy Jenkins or Bob Glidden, and I'm never gonna be.
Nor do you claim to be.
But I'm trying. I really am, and I love what I do.
You mentioned a second ago, when the door shuts, it's all you. I think we've all seen it every single race. Your team owner, Richard Freeman, what's he saying to you before he shuts the door every
He's
single
saying
time?
something.
He's saying something.
I love to say what he says.
It's one of life's great and grand mysteries, because something's getting said there, but no one's hearing it.
So what he says, is don't F this up.
That's what you said. You were speculating.
And some he says he can read my eyes. Like that's all you can see. And some you can once you've been around somebody long enough, you can understand what's going on. And he says there's moments like he knows where I'm, having doubt or whatever, and he'll usually just try to lighten the mood, or he'll, when he sees the doubt in my eyes, he'll hit me in my knee and he say, "You're the best there ever was. Like let's show them." But usually it's don't F this up for sure.
Yep.
You mentioned about dealing with pressure, and that's something you had to learn. Are there techniques? Is there stuff you do to, or is it just like practice, and you just know the mechanics, the whole process?
A lot of that, but also I grew up in a house. My dad, before he made his money in business, was a positive mental attitude coach. He toured the country teaching seminars. So we had it ingrained in us, right? Pounded into our heads. And before every round, I talk to my dad, whether I'm testing or I'm at a national event. So having him, with my neuro program stuff, and then of course having the support of my sister who's there every weekend, and she works her butt off, but she's my total hype girl, right? So having that support definitely helps, because they believe in me when I don't believe in myself, and then they make me believe.
Yeah.
So I'll give a small example. My first final round was in Chicago against Jason Line, and we had to do an engine swap after the semifinals. We beat Warren Johnson, and there was rain moving in, so NHRA was rushing us. Well, we went to fire the car. We had a crank trigger issue, so NHRA's get buckled up back here and drag your stuff up, and we'll run. So I had to get suited up in the pit, and we towed up, and I just was a ball of nerves, right? My first final round in Pro Stock against Jason Line, and we go up there, and I went red, right? And there's another situation in Houston that proves how far I came from that. Was we had a pro jack failure. We couldn't get my car down. AJ was waiting on us. We pulled up, and I'm rushing, right? I'm still putting on my stuff, and they're like, fire up. So we go up, and I went on a hole shot. But it's just about be in those high pressure situations, or when you're rushed, is remaining calm and remaining positive, and just focusing on the task at hand. And it's way easier said than done, but I actually welcome the pressure now. Yesterday in the final round, I knew what was on the line, right? If Greg Anderson won, it would take the lead way back down to 60 points or less.
Basically, yeah, and then double points. It would take it down to basically 2 rounds before qualifying.
And so I'm this is it right here. And I tell myself that a lot too when I race people winner take all world championship. It's when I used to practice on the Porta Tree with my dad at home. Make yourself think that, right? And so I'm I go up there and I try to rip his throat out, and I'm 12 on the tree, and we win the race. But that stuff, I live off of it. I love it.
Are you in a point situation right now, or basically you just have to stage the car in Pomona?
Not technically. Okay. I mean, really, it's 88 right now, I think, or 96.
For my lead?
Yeah.
114.
114,
Thank
I'm
you,
sorry.
though.
So 114.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
There's 191 points available.
So basically, you have 191 points available to race.
Somebody would have to pull a miracle. That means they have to be low every single round.
Right, because it's points and a half. But that also means the qualifying points are points and a half. And we're talking about the NHRA point system. And with Erica going in with a 114-point advantage into Pomona in the in-and-out finals, the reality is she needs to do what she's done all season, or at least since Bristol this season, which is gain qualifying points and then knock a couple of rounds off, and the job's done. Now, that's a lot easier said than done, because one has to assume that the games will begin during the first round of qualifying. So in drag racing, we qualify the cars on ET. Quickest car is number 1, slowest car is number 16. But if you know that you need to stop Eric Anders in the first round to have any shot at a title, you can shut your car off early. You can manipulate your own performance to place yourself into a competitive spot to maybe stop her, which they did a couple of years ago.
And
they positioned themselves right.
Yeah. I fully expected it to go on this weekend.
Me
and
too.
I messed around with Greg at the top end because he was running not well during qualifying. I'm like, what are you doing over there, sandbagger? And we have a good rapport. But, they've done it before. Dallas Glenn tried to do it last year in Dallas and ended up DNQing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fine line between, do you Michael Phelps it and focus on what you're doing while your competitors look at you? I think that's our strategy. We're not going to worry about anything on the outside. But I fully expect something in Pomona Pomona. Greg did it successfully, hooked me first round, and it was fourth out at the finish line. We came out on top, so it was another high pressure situation. Like
what we're talking about here is basically team drag racing.
Yeah.
In other words, more people than one on each team working against each other. That's why these guys would place themselves on the ladder to specifically try and take her out early for another teammate. But it also works the other way, and I feel I can bring this up because he brought it up on the show this weekend. Clearly, Jeg shut the car off early on you, right?
Well, we both got loose.
Did you? Okay.
Very loose. And they didn't spray the run before. It cost Fernando Jr. the run, being like closer to the front of the pack.
Saw that.
It spun up. His lateral G was like absolutely insane through third and fourth gear. And we do this all the time. We need spray. I know it's bad for the nitro cars, but had that been a qualifying run, I would have absolutely 100% shut off. Like, there's a fine line between being loose and out of control, and we were right on the edge of that.
But is there that team conversation?
No.
No?
And if anybody wants to question Jeg Coughlin on that, I don't think that's something that he stands for or his family. But that's, of course, what the idiots on the interweb are talking about. But that's okay.
And apparently me.
Yeah. No. I didn't mean that negatively. But it's absolutely a question, right? But we were 14 and 18, and if you look at the incrementals before Jeg shut off, I was a little bit ahead of him anyway. But what a good drag race, I guess. I mean, he's so badass.
Yeah.
And so we talk about these finals, and we set this up. But actually, before we go that way, I want to dip back on a couple of different things because, again, the backstory to me and the evolution of your career is the most fascinating part. I'm fortunate to have a front row seat to the current part of it, and having watched the other part of it from a distance, I think it's cool. You mentioned the Dodge year, and I want to talk about the Dodge year. And this does not impugn Dodge or Dodge Performance or Mopar people. You can save the hate mail. But for 2016. Elite Motorsports switched from Chevrolets to Dodges. And unfortunately for you guys, it was the exact wrong time for that to happen because the NHRA went to fuel injection for that year. And they also went to a 10,500 RPM rev limiter. And once they put that rev limiter in place, that Dodge engine has not been competitive then to now.
So to make up for the torque they lack down low, they have to run higher RPM. And that's why when AJ was crushing it, right, they were almost to 12,000 RPM. So when you take that away from them, you're right, it hasn't been competitive since. So it was like the perfect storm, right? We've been working on this deal with Dodge and Mopar, and you wish your whole life for a manufacturer partnership, right? Like that.
That's
was
the biggest deal you could get
ever. And I was me and Jeg Coughlin, right, dream team, and it just went crash and burn, baby. We went from number 1 in the world to number 9 and 10 is how Jeg and I finished that year.
Wow.
And then coming back from that, like in 2017, I only won one race, same as 18. Like when we didn't focus on our Chevy program, we got behind. And so really 1 year took 3 years to come back. So that's why I kind of mentioned that.
And look, the 9 and 10 of the points was impressive in its own right because it was 9 and 10 in points basically via hole shots all season long.
Yes.
It was not outrunning anybody.
And that's the kind of stuff that makes you a better racer driving but like nothing against the Mustang or the Dodge. But when you drive stuff that isn't as competitive, that's the only shot you have at winning. So you have to be good. And then when you get eliminated early, I spend all my time up there watching the other drivers and trying to learn something. So
I know you stand on the starting line, you can see your clutch pedal.
I do. I practice all the time.
Yeah. Man, the feeling of a whole shot win has got to be the most epic thing ever. That's way better than outrunning somebody, isn't it?
Well, for me, I mean, but also I want to be the fastest car on the property. So, my guys feel the same way about that area of the car, and I really love winning on whole shots. But it's also different now than it used to be. Like everybody's like 00, Double E, and 00 Dallas and whatnot. Well, you see that's kind of tapered off a little bit, and the way that we're having to run the cars now is so different. It's very, very hard to be that good on the tree. We're leaving almost 1,000 RPM lower than we used to, so that takes a lot away from it. But we're trying to find more horsepower, right? And we're making more torque, so you can't like overpower the racetrack. So all those things come into play, and people don't necessarily understand that either. But yes, I love whole shot wins.
Yeah.
How much figuring that out, is that all done during the season? How much preseason like testing is available to you guys as a team or as like the sport in general? Like, how do you figure all that stuff out?
Well, in Pro Stock, we're allowed to test whenever we want.
Okay.
I think at some point the nitro cars were limited.
They used to limit them to like 4 test days a year.
Yeah.
That's gone out the window. I think the Coletta guys have 4 test days this week, I believe, so far. So yeah,
okay,
no.
that helps.
So they did limit it for
Okay.
them. I think that had to do with a
Yeah.
nitro shortage or something, or too much money was being spent. But we're able to test. We're based out of Winningest, Oklahoma, which is an hour south of Oklahoma City. So we'll run up to Tulsa, which is just a couple hours, a great quarter-mile track. And we do a lot of testing. But during the winter, we only do 1 test session in Bradenton before we start the year. So not as much testing as like the KB guys, for instance. Like they just roll their car out of their shop and test at Mooresville. So we're kind of a lower testing team, but spend a lot of time in Tulsa during the summer months.
Is your routine different track to track? Like, do you know Pomona's got the sun in your eyes, so you're going to handle it a little bit differently? And do you have all those tracks memorized, so the first time you're in the car, you know what to do?
I do, and I take notes, and I always get out my logbooks from the year before and kind of see where my clutch linkage setup is, and I always write down stuff like at certain times the sun is here, and like Pomona, for instance, you got to cover the brake because it's downhill. If you roll up to pre-stage and you're just sitting there in neutral, right, your car will roll through the beams. So training these new drivers, like I have all these notes and I try to tell them everything. But yes, absolutely. And come like 3 or 4 o'clock in Pomona on Sunday, like you got to tape up your shield, and it's like absolutely blinding, kind of like in Seattle will shut off, which I think we're going to start having to do in Charlotte because
that was horrible this year. It was
last year or the spring, whatever it was. It was like a mirror. You couldn't see if you were pre-stage, staged. You couldn't see the ambers drop.
So Pro Stock qualifying was bizarre on Saturday because basically the driver in the right lane would simply wait for the driver in the left lane to leave and then leave, so they knew the tree was green. They couldn't see where they were. Yeah, that was horrible.
Yeah, and in the spring this past year in Charlotte, I told my crew chiefs, like I could only see like just a smidgen of the pre-stage bulb, and I'm like, I can't see, so I'm gonna let the clutch out and you just say stop when I'm staged. And then so they did that, and then of course I like deck, then they say, okay, he's staged, and then I deck it. You're obviously not trying to cut a light in qualifying, but it was just craziness.
It's never crossed my mind how that affects lane choice too.
Absolutely.
I've always thought that was a track condition, but the track condition could also be how the light is on the tree.
Yeah, but my crew chief still asks me that, and I always tell them put me where the car is good. I'll figure it out, unless it's something crazy like Charlotte, which we're fortunate doesn't happen during eliminations. But yeah, it was interesting for sure. But that's when the team communication comes in to play.
Yep.
You're a fiery competitor. You race with a lot of intensity, and it comes across. And because if you're somebody that races with intensity and isn't afraid to say stuff, it cuts both ways. We talk about social media. There are days when it's like, man, this is great. Feeling pretty good about myself. This guy says I'm talented at my job. There are other days where you turn around, it's like, why did I even bother waking up this morning?
Yeah, I mean, damn.
Yeah, and so to me, what's interesting is like when I first got the job I have with NHRA, it's like I went from like you're the track announcer, everybody loves you, hey, and then all of a sudden I did the first race, and it's like, God, maybe I'm horrible at this because everybody says so. So it took me a couple of years, honestly, to like get past the point of not fixating on it, but not being like wounded by it. You're on a much bigger stage than I am on that front. So do you continue to deal with that as a struggle?
I definitely struggle with it because I'm not really one to let things slide. Like my sister's like, just quit looking at it, like whatever. But when they attack me and mine, like it makes me mad. Like I would rather go down brawling in the street before I'm going to let somebody slide on something. And I've also acquired that also. I used to be a lot more calm, by the way. But
I might be debatable. Honestly,
mean.
I think that's a debatable point.
But I'm really not mean. But when people send you these emails about like something that you said or something that you did or have another cheeseburger, you fat ass, and your eyes are crossed, and like, good Lord, like you said, I'm going to just go back to bed and start over again tomorrow. But it's definitely, you live your life in a fishbowl, right? Yeah. Everybody is looking in at you. Everybody's judging. Your report card is instant with your time slip and the scoreboards. And we're all doing the best that we can, right? We're so blessed to get to do what we love for a living. Yeah. Like, you're awesome at your job. Obviously, the idiots in the beanbag chairs in their mom's basement, they don't get an opinion, in my opinion. But it's just something that comes with the territory. And 87% of the time I really try to be graceful. But
I've heard you say a bunch of times you're best when you're mad, though.
I am. When people, he says that too on the show. When I watch the show, when I go home on Mondays, he's like, when Erica's got a chip on her shoulder, I'm like, man, I'm not sure I want to be known for that. But like, back me into a corner. I'm coming out swinging. And my crew chief's the same way. So when what went down this weekend, Mark's like, he just pissed off the wrong two people. So here we go. And we parked it in the winner's circle. So.
I like that mentality. It's because you're right. And social media, in my opinion, it's like Brian and I were talking earlier this morning. Like it's a great thing, and it's also a terrible thing because it's just like direct to your
with zero consequence.
Bead right to your eyeballs.
Right.
It gets real personal, and being a woman's got to be the worst on that too. I have female friends who share me some of the stuff that gets DM'd to them, and I'm like, this is insane.
I can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
It's not lovely.
No.
But and on the same vein, you have a very strong relationship with Shirley Muldowney. You've had one for a very long time. And so we talk about what Shirley dealt with, which was like overt. Like in Shirley's era, there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram. It was like somebody like
in your
basically
face.
spitting in your face.
Yes.
They didn't have the safety of their home to do it. And a lot of guys found out that was the wrong idea because Shirley had no problem answering with her hands or whatever she needed to answer with. So is it the same or is it different in that those pressures still exist? We love to talk about drag racing as like the most inclusive motorsport, which it is. There's no denying it, like right across the board. But that doesn't mean it's all like just rosy.
It's definitely not rosy. I'm sure that we don't have to deal with as much as Shirley did back then. But people want to dog her for being the way that she is. But if people knew really what she had to go through, like, it's not an excuse, but that sucks, and that's why she's tough and she's hard. Yeah. And
but she also made it through because there was that in her to begin with.
Yes.
I think she had the fight in her.
Yeah, I think she always did too. She's an extremely tough and very opinionated lady, but look what she's done for our sport and the barriers that she broke down for people like me and Alexis and Courtney and Brittany and Leah and every other female driver out there. Angie Smith, who is such a badass, by the way, for what she did this weekend.
That was unreal.
Oh yeah.
Gosh, I was sick after her crash in St. Louis. She's a dear friend of mine and also somebody who has worked her butt off and never given up. And no matter what the people, and she's had to work through a lot of stuff, and she's become a much better rider.
Well, that's for the sake of the audience, we should clarify. Angie is a Pro Stock motorcycle driver, and she stepped off the bike at 180 miles an hour, something
180
like that.
some miles an hour in St. Louis. She had a horrible crash, basically broke both her feet, 8 out of 10 toes, and in order to stay in the top 10 in points, she actually got on a motorcycle last weekend, staged the motorcycle, and made a complete run. Now, not a full speed run, but she went down the racetrack, which allowed her to qualify, which gave her qualifying points, which ultimately will keep her in the top 10 for the rest of the season. But yeah, and that's another thing, right? That's another thing where social media cut both ways. This is courageous and cool. These people are morons and idiots that I hate, and it's like, where is the middle to just
don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's a tough line to walk, but yeah, Shirley, she made all of this possible for all of us, and I think the longer that you do it and the more crap, for lack of a better word, that you have to go through, it toughens you up, and it makes you less tolerant of ignorance and BS.
As it should.
Yeah, I'm sure y'all deal with the same stuff.
We're going to have 3 female Pro Stock races next year, more than we've ever had. Two's been the most, and now Sierra Wildguest is going to come on. And
Eric is a fan of all of them.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, the group text is just definitely flying on that one. But regardless of the personal feeling, that to me is still a big deal. It's another kind of evolutionary step, and that is the door that you opened up. That is the wall that you crashed down for other people.
Well, thanks for saying that. And yeah, it's definitely cool, but it's also cool. Like, you look at when I first started my Pro Stock career, I was racing guys like Warren and Kurt Johnson, Mike Edwards, Bob Glidden, like the real big names of the sport, and it was the gentleman's club, right? Like you go to the golf club where women aren't allowed, and that was what it was, and they were 40, 50, 60 years old. And look at how young it is now. Greg Anderson and I joke about it, but we're the old guys.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of where our class has come, and that was something that, after the rule changes with EFI and the rev limiter, we were having very low car counts, and KB, Greg and Jason at the time, and my team owner, Richard Freeman, got together, tried to collectively lower the cost of engine rental programs. When we didn't have full fields, we would bring our extra cars out and fly a driver in just so we could have 16 cars. And like, look, this is attainable. You can come do this. Nothing about what we do is cheap, but it's the cheapest it's ever been. So that's, and now Pro Stock is where it's at.
23 cars last
weekend. I know,
weekend.
it's so exciting.
And I know that the class grew when they cut down the number of events. How do you feel about the full schedule?
Being a racer, I just wanted to go racing. But you look at Pro Stock as a whole, they're pretty much just successful business owners, right? And this is where they go play. There's not very many hired drivers in Pro Stock. So it's changed a lot, and I don't know.
I mean, and what David's referencing, for the first time in, I think, 5 years, Pro Stock will be contested at every NHRA national event now. The class was brought down to 16, then 18 races, and now they'll be back at every single race. Now, I can say that because this show will air after the NHRA releases that information, or this will be my only job anymore. So that's fine.
Did I just fail on that? We can edit this.
Well, I failed. I forgot what he asked me. I pulled a John Force and started talking about something else. So when they went from 24 to 18, it definitely freed up a lot of people's time. Like, you can have more of a life when you're only on the road 18 weeks as opposed to 24. And for business owners, that was a big deal. And it lessened the blow cost-wise to run 18 races. But next year, we're all at 21, which we're excited about, because also get a lot of hate mail, even though it's not my decision, that Pro Stock wasn't in Seattle and Sonoma this year. Like, hey, man, I wanted to go.
Yeah,
it's not my fault.
But yeah. So let's talk. I want two distinct stories out of you here. I want the sweetest win, the most painful loss.
How do you pick that?
I think one of them probably easy to pick.
Yeah, probably the sweetest one ever was the World Finals in 2014, final round, winner take all with Jason Line. You can say my first one in Chicago. Yeah, that was very cool. And the fact that we beat Greg Anderson was even more awesome, because he was the one guy that said he didn't want to lose to me. And with God having the sense of humor he does, that's the way it worked out, and it was awesome. But Pomona, 2014, my first Indy win, it was super meaningful to me. Toughest loss would probably, I have two. The first one was in Bristol in 2011 when I came back with Victor Cagnazzi. I got to the final round against Mike Edwards. I was good on the tree. He was not, and we had a transmission failure. And I remember, like, before I ran that race, there she is.
We were just talking about Angie Smith.
Yeah, she was talking right here.
Before I got to that final, my crew chief came on my speakers in my helmet, and he said, it's so hard to get here, we got to capitalize. And it just means so much. And I remember getting back from that run and laying in the trailer floor and just, like, my heart was broke. Like my first boyfriend just broke up with me, and that was tough. And then Indy, when I was 007 and Alex was 120 on the tree. And that one I was physically ill because it was the U.S. Nationals. We got out of the car at the top end. I saw the time slip, 007. He's like 120 something. Again, had a failure. I pedaled it and drove through it, and it was painful. I got down at the other end and I puked over the wall. Like, it literally made me sick. Yeah, I was pissed, and he was my teammate too. Yeah. So happy for him then, obviously. But yeah, those are my probably two most painful losses.
You have to put those in different places, I think, and I look at people who have been really successful in drag racing, and I think there are people who like denied themselves the joys of wins. Like, I don't necessarily. I look at some guys from back in the day, Warren Johnson specifically, right? Like, when Warren Johnson would win a race, he'd kind of smirk and be like, "Oh well, that's what we came here to do."
Yeah.
And it's like, I get that, but like, if you're denying yourself that ability to at least enjoy it for 5 minutes, like, that was kind of always a strange thing for me. And then, not going to name any names right now, but there are people that take way too much joy in the victories, and it's like there's a middle ground there.
There is, and I might be on the excessive side of excited because of what we've been through and how much it actually means and the sacrifices that everyone makes. I'm not saying I'm the only one that did it, so don't write me that either. But like, it's a very fine line. And now, like, we had a successful season last year. We've won 10 out of 13 final rounds that we appeared in 18 or 19 races, and just had a crazy awesome year. And Richard, my team owner, has a plane, and he's like, all right, let's go. We got to get on the plane. I'm like, hey, we used to just want to qualify, and now we're winning. Like, don't cut the winner's circle short. Like you don't know when this is going to be your last one. You got to enjoy it. So yes, there's a fine line, and then there's people that get excited for qualifying or winning first round, which is also cool because they don't do it often. But woosah.
Yeah. Act like you've been there before.
Yeah.
So this has not gotten boring for you at all?
No.
It's got to be a slog with all the travel and everything.
That part's tough. I mean, we all do it, right? That's probably the most exhausting part of it all is the travel and sleeping in different beds every night and waking up and walking into the wall because it wasn't at the last room, or going to the room number you had 2 days ago instead of the room that you're in, and you're like, my key doesn't work, and they rekey it, and you go up there and you're like banging on the door.
Yes, this is my life as well.
Yeah.
When we kind of look at goals, and you often talk about goal setting, and the goals are very simple: show up to win the race. We talk about winningest NHRA professional female racer, really winningest female professional racer in all global motorsports. So like that joking about the 100 with Greg, like that's actually a goal, right?
Oh,
you can say it out loud.
Yeah.
I was going to ask this too. What is the
Why
next
would you
goal?
not say it out loud?
Okay. I mean, I want to win 10 million of them, but I don't know how long you want to do it. Like, I always thought I would have a family. That's another part of being a girl that sucks is you have to, like, pause or quit or take a break. And obviously, I don't know when that'll happen, or if, because I'm old now. But, yeah, absolutely. It's a goal. I mean, as long as I'm going to do it, we might as well keep trying to win races and win world championships. And with the group that I have now, I don't see that stopping. I questioned that at the beginning of the year, like, what are we doing wrong when those first 7 races when we struggled so bad? But those valleys are, I use this term all the time, those valleys are what makes the peak so much more enjoyable because it shows you, like, okay, you were here, now you're here, and you got to crawl back out. And it gives you humility and a goal to reach for.
Have you now won every track on the event?
No, I haven't. I'm missing out on a couple. I never won at Englishtown. That closed, and same with Atlanta. So I can't do those. But I still have not won at Gainesville. Huh. And last year, this year rather.
Yeah, that emoji with like the monkey with its eyes shifting back and forth.
Like,
that's kind of what that was kind of the Gainesville experience.
It was awful. We qualified. We were number 1. My teammate TJ outran us by mile per hour, so we qualified number 2. We go up for first round. My car will not start.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, with the Leahy system and which took us down this crazy road, and here we are. But yeah, it was Gainesville. I told my guys after, because the year before we set the world record, and I lost on a hole shot to Bo Butner because he was 002 and I was like 70, and I just wanted to puke. And then I got mad, right? And we won the next 5 races in a row. So there was that. There was that. But so after what happened in I'm like, Gainesville hates me. I told my guys, since it's the first race on the tour, I said, y'all go racing. I'm going to the beach, and I'll see you in Phoenix or wherever we're going. Yeah.
Somebody put a wig on and drive the car.
Yeah, I am out. But yeah, I haven't won in Gainesville, and I think Denver. I never won in Denver either.
And won't, unfortunately.
Yeah. I love Denver.
Yeah, I'm glad we got Phoenix back. And
too.
Phoenix back for the haul too. It's not just back for like a year to year. Like they got a good thing going there. NHRA is going to be announcing a return to at least one other track we haven't been to in a while, and then there's a new track being built outside of Kansas City that we're planning on racing as well. In terms of interpersonal rivalries, one of the ones that got stunted and went away way too quickly, which would have been freaking awesome for a guy like me and my job, was Tanner Gray.
Yeah.
That would have gone on for years.
It would have.
Had Tanner stayed in Pro Stock. And I want your story of the top end exchange, one of the great top end exchanges of all time, when you shot it right back at him. This was phenomenal.
So there was some behind the scenes issues with both of our teams and whatnot. And Tanner, he's talented. You cannot
but
take
he was a snotty kind of.
He's 17 years old.
Yeah, he was a snotty kid. He was a super snotty kid.
I've been racing longer than he's been alive, and he came in and, like, to me, and again, it's how you're brought up, right? But you have respect for the people that have done it before you, and you treat everybody with kindness until they do otherwise to you. And he was mouthy, and I'm not being mean because
no, you're not being
mean. Cool.
No, but this is not mean. This is the truth, and he'd tell you because he was a
he's
kid.
up a lot.
I might just say it. He was a.
He's grown up a lot since. But he was mouthy and whatever. So we're in Topeka, and I think we're just qualifying.
Yeah.
And we go to exit the track. There's a flag guy at the top end that holds one flag and waves the other flag to go. So I always check up on my competitors to see where they're at. I like to know where everything's going on, and the flag guy waves me, so I go commit to making the turn, and Tanner just goes like right in front of me and cuts in the corner, and I had to like slam on my brakes, and so he gets out of the car at the top end, or I do, and I say, hey man, what's up? Like, why'd you cut me off? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you know what you just did. And so we had some word exchange or whatever, and then it goes back and forth, and he called me sweetheart. And that just sent me to the freaking and he said, this is NHRA drag racing, sweetheart. And I'm like, listen, you were still pooping in your pants when I was driving Pro Stock. So.
And I'm not your sweetheart.
Yeah, and I ain't your effing sweetheart. It was like the beep, 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 beep.
It was so awesome.
And then, as God would have it again, we had to race each other in elimination, and that was 005 and loaded his ass up. So peace out. But the sweetheart thing, man, come on. I was like, in my head, I was like, please just push me or put your finger in my chest so I can knock your teeth out. But he's also a little kid.
See, as a fan, I love that, though.
Yes.
I don't really like the kindler, gentler thing where you love everybody in the other lane, and I don't like the we're only racing ourselves thing. I want you racing that guy, and I think that you've got that.
Yeah, and I think there's still great rivalries in our class, and like the one that will live forever is Greg and I. Like, you know, we went through this phase where we hated each other, him more so than me, and now we have a mutual respect for one another. And you know, he ran in front of me in the semis this past weekend in Vegas, and then I came, so it's him and I, right? And I reach across the car and we like shake hands or whatever. He goes, hey, old guys to the front. So like it's kind of cool. But then there's like the deal with Hartford and like,
to me there's like a maturity. The Greg the rivalry, to me, the entertainment value of that one is there's a maturity to it. It's like the Lakers and the Celtics. Like I'm watching these two legacy teams go at it, and I know that there is competitive spirit. There's no real ill will, but there is a competitive spirit there, and there's a respect. But then, you know, I can see on the racetrack with Hartford, and I know he's going to go up there and do something kooky or weird, or try to do something kooky or weird.
Also great as being a fan.
Yes, and so that it goes all these different directions, and I think, you know, for whatever reason, our fans, it's the weirdest thing in the world. Drag racing fans are super sensitive to everything.
Everything.
And I don't get it. Like, our greatest heroes in the sport are the people that would drag somebody behind a gas station and beat the daylights out of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, but now we're like, oh man, like, you know, Matt Hagan was mad that he thought Bob Tasca might have been cheating with his header. Of course he was.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah, we want all these rivalries, and we want people to like show their personalities, right? And then when somebody does, it's like, holy cow, what is going on?
Yeah.
Bunch of sissies.
So let's look forward to Pomona. You know, the approach obviously stays the same, but what's your love level of Pomona as opposed to Vegas? Because Vegas is unrivaled, right? Vegas is on top. But talk to me about what the general feels you have for Pomona are.
I love racing at Pomona, especially in the fall, like the cool, crisp air, right? You go out there and it's just a whole lot of fun. And then now with points and a half, I don't know how many years it's been that way, but just a handful, it definitely makes things interesting. So like stress level 9 million, get a family-sized bucket of Tums and roll into Pomona and, you know, hope for the best. And, you know, the difference between a dream and a reality is setting a goal. So we set our goals really high. We feel like we win races before we leave the shop with being prepared. And that's something that racing with Elite Motorsports has really taught me, all the organization, all the being prepared as much as we can be, and then just rolling in with our heads down. Like I mentioned, the Michael Phelps thing, and there's this really cool picture that I have on my phone that it's Michael Phelps at the Olympics, right? And he's just like, he's ahead of his competitors, and he's like looking at the finish line, right, going towards his goal, and the guy in the lane next to him is like looking at him, like seeing where he's at. Put our blinders on, worry about us and our team, and just execute as perfectly as possible. So that's my plan for Pomona. I have a goal of parking it in the winner's circle again there. I don't know how the points will work. You said maybe second round or something like that, and if that's the way it goes, good, but I still want to win the race. So balls to the wall. Here we go.
They always end up giving you your championship in the middle of either qualifying or eliminations when you cross that point. That's what my question was going to be. Would you rather just wait for it all to the end, or do you actually like the celebration in the middle of the...
I think it's cool to, when you clinch, to do it like we did in Vegas last year and come back in the truck in front of the stands and everybody's cheering. But also, like, again, I work on my car, so that takes a man away from the car and somebody has to pick up the slack. So that part of it as a competitor stinks. But I get the bigger picture and I understand it. But it's also so exciting. It's a huge adrenaline rush, like, and it makes me like go after it more. So when we clinched in Vegas last year, it was second round, I think, against Kyle Koretsky, and then we went on to win the race. So we're able to just like kind of go back to focusing on what we're doing.
Yeah, because it's got to take your head in a different place that you got to gather up again.
Yeah, like, and don't let up because it's not over. Just because it's over, it's not over.
Yeah.
Like, that's something my crew chief's really good, at reminding me, because, like, depending on if it's a teammate in the other lane, he's like, don't let up, don't let up. Like, we got to go out here and give it all that we got. So it's definitely a challenge mentally.
Yeah.
I had a quick question, just maybe a non sequitur because it's not drag racing related, but I wonder what you drive, like what cars you have or have had in your life that really meant something to you.
Oh, man. So currently I drive a Grand Wagoneer. I drive for Chevrolet. Sorry, Chevy. But I drive a Grand Wagoneer. I love it. It's my third one. Before that, I had an Expedition. Before that, I had a couple Tahoes. Like, I have no kids and no pets and really not that many friends. So I'm not sure why I have an SUV.
You're from Texas.
It's like having a big purse, right, with no cash. But
Right.
So I like bigger vehicles. I want to feel safe on the road. But my favorite car, my dad and I built a 67 Chevelle before I started racing.
Nice.
Well, before I started professionally racing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to find that car one of these days when I make enough money, and I want to give it back to my dad. But we had that. We had a 69 Camaro, Boyd Coddington car with big tires on the back, all kinds of hot rods growing up. So that was really fun for me. I had a clutch Cobra in high school, convertible with a roll bar. That was kind of
Good.
it was cool. But I just recently bought a new Corvette and turned around and sold it because, well, somebody offered me way more money than I paid for it. So, but it was cool. It was like the Stingray. It was white with red interior, black accents, carbon wing package, all of that. I love cars. I love them, obviously.
It's great, and I think to me that's kind of a great almost closing note. And I think when for me in my job as a broadcaster and just someone who loves drag racing, I love the fact that it's beyond a passing fancy for you. I love the fact that you had to prove through a course of a lot longer than people realize that this was not something you're willing to give up on. And I think one of the things that crushes me at times about this sport is that there are people that kind of blow in with the wind and have a little success and get way too much attention for it, and they're frickin' gone when the wind changes direction.
Yep.
So, between the hot rods you had growing up, the junior dragster racing, and now we're talking about potentially a 6th championship. I think it's a truly interesting human story beyond just what the statistics say.
Well, thanks. And I think it's a lesson to myself and to everyone else that if you don't quit and you surround yourself with the right people, anything's possible. You just can't give up. You can't ever give up. And it's been a challenge, right? It's not been easy. We all know this, and we've all talked about it. But the people that come in, and they're able to just hop in state-of-the-art equipment, be able to qualify at, in the top half without much effort, it's not like a jealousy thing, but it's just like, Greg and I talked about this at the Champions Dinner in Dallas a couple weeks ago. Was just like, he said that to me. He's like, I love that you've never quit. And he goes, what I hate about now is that all these kids come in and they want instant gratification, right? Like, my dad wrote a check and I'm going to win and I'm going to be the best and I'm going to win the championship this year. And like, that's cool because you have to believe in yourself and you have to speak things into existence, but also have respect for what you're getting into and you know, put your head down and maybe be quiet until you accomplish something. That's basically it. But I love what I do. And
you're doing it in the most cutthroat class too.
It's tough. It is. It's definitely tough. And that's another thing I love about it. Like you can be 10 or 12 on the tree and get loaded, but you go out there, you make the best run you can possibly can for your crew chiefs. You do the best you can driving, and if they can get in that window, they deserved it that day. And Dallas, the field, the top half of the field was separated by just a few thousandths of a second, not hundreds, thousands.
It was 500s top to bottom, 1 to 16. And just for reference, the tightest Pro Stock field of all time is 23 thousandths, 1 to 16.
Wow.
That's crazy.
It is bonkers.
Wow.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
You always have a busy SEMA. I'm glad you were able to join us. I'm glad you're one of our very first episodes of Hot Rod the Pod where it all began, or the Hot Rod Pod where it all began, because we're going to be telling stories like this really throughout the course of this series. And do you guys have any closing remarks or thoughts?
I will see you in Pomona, and I expect you'll be in a great mood at the end of the day.
I hope I am. I think I will be anyways. But I do want to add one more thing. As a kid, like, my favorite magazine to buy was Hot Rod Magazine. I'm not just saying that. So just recently, Kevin McKenna wrote a story about us, and it was on hotrod.com. And I was like, can you tell me if it's in the magazine? Can you tell me if it's in the magazine? Because I'm going to frame it and
Here's
hang
your
it on my
guy,
wall.
John
I'll
McGann.
make that happen.
Kevin's like, it would be a dream of mine too. But I'm like, I told him, I was like, if you hear what issue it's going to be in, please let me know. But like, dude, most favorite magazine of all. Like, I had it in my backpack at school. Like, totally normal for
That's
a third
awesome.
grade girl. I know. But
Nice.
so, but I loved it, and I really appreciate you guys having me on. This has been fun.
Super cool. Thank you.
I just like the drive the bitch back videos.
Drive the
I love those
DTBB.
videos. It's-
DTBB.
I
And
love
that
that.
was total accident. It happened in Charlotte in 2018. My engine guy, Jake, he's like, drive it back to the pit. We ain't towing it. I'm like, are you serious? Because you know Pro Stock, right? With the clutch, everything's so intricate and important. And he's like, yeah, drive it back. And so I pulled back in the pit and whacked the throttle and shut it off. My sister's like, what'd you just do? I said, I just drove that bitch back. And I didn't even mean it. You know, like,
Just
I said,
came
that's
out.
just what it said. And now it's a T-shirt and whatever. So fans look forward to the video and, you know, all in good fun. So we
It's
enjoy
awesome.
doing it. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for tuning in. It's been a great, informative conversation with Erica. We're going to be having a slew of those throughout the SEMA show and at other great locations around the country and eventually around the world when we achieve world podcast domination here on Where It All Began. But no, thanks. I'm Brian Loans, David Freiburger, John McGann, and, of course, Eric Anders. Thank you for your time today, and we'll be back soon with the next episode of the show.